Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Hero Movie Podcast, your greatest source for superhero movie and TV discussion in the multiverse. I am your host, Adam Portress, and joining me today, his nickname in high school was Jungle Machine, Sweet Sean Kovacs from the internet.
Get out of my head, Portress.
And his nickname in high school was also the Big Red Cheese, Bruce Leslie.
It was Big Red, just cut the cheese.
Oh,
Come on, get
I'm
it right.
sorry. I just, there was a little problem in my notes.
And I am a prickly pear, but you can call me Dr. Gorilla. Only say it backwards.
Oh, is that what that is?
Come on, Sean. Don't play the fool.
I was busy thinking that was not Gorilla Grodd.
I had to convince myself of that. Also.
Yeah, Dr. Alarog, which is a name eerily similar to alligator, but Alarog is gorilla backwards.
Makes more sense. You learn a little bit of something. And does anyone get the connection with my song? Huh? It's the Marvelettes. Huh?
Oh,
okay.
I feel like I had to.
I was thinking, yeah, that's good. That's good work. I was thinking
he's not just an average face.
He's, every now and then he can pull one off here. But welcome back, everybody. This week we're talking about Shazam, but we don't have a preview of that Zachary Levi. We're waiting until next week, just like the rest of you, for that one. We're talking about the Shazam cartoon from 1981. We said we were going to do the live-action version. It turns out we had to pay money for that, and in good conscience.
I can't state this enough. I don't mind paying money for this show, like out of my pocket. I don't care. I just couldn't in good faith buy something like this where
exactly
I'm not
you
buying.
don't want to encourage them to keep offering it, do you?
I'm not buying episode 3 and 4 of
what a weird thing to own
of Shazam. I'm not going to do it.
Imagine trying to explain it to your great-great-grandfather that you bought episodes 3 and 4 of it was just a license to digitally view. He wouldn't be sure where he failed along the way, but he definitely did if he had a great-grandson like you.
$2.99 a pop for that as well. Like, it's not even like it's
not even cheap.
Yeah,
it's too expensive to be funny.
If you buy the whole season, it's $15. Also, still too expensive. But even though you get 20 some odd episodes or whatever the heck it is, it's still just like, when are we going to watch these? Because that was my thought initially. Was like, well, listen, if we buy the season, which by the way, there are like 3 seasons of this show. Like, how is that even a thing? But I was just like, even then, it's like $15. But we would have to cover at least a quarter of those to make that $15 purchase worth it. And
I don't know if you guys caught on to this, but on YouTube there's an older guy, I don't know his name, who is literally going episode by episode through the live action 70s
and he's
Shazam
glorious
show.
I watched him.
He is.
He's so good. He's just look him up. Just look up Shazam TV
why
show.
was that not me?
It could listen. It
What a
still
great
could.
idea.
It still could be you, buddy. It still could be. You just got to pick something stupid. You want to do a Snorks podcast that's just like that? Just whatever.
I did
he's
episode
doing
by
with the
episode
Snorks.
of Attack on Titan, and I was doing great till they ran out of episodes.
Yeah.
Now I don't know what to do.
Back to the Snorks again. So instead of doing that, we went back again to the YouTube, and it turns out they have all of the singular season of Shazam, the cartoon show from 1981. From is this Filmation? Filmation.
Yeah.
I don't want to say Funimation because that's a different thing altogether. But Filmation and stuff. So we'll be getting into that. Those first 2 episodes are not too long. But before we do that, we want to say thank you to everyone that supports this show over at patreon.com/HMP. Those awesome people get the pre-show, post-show, and Dinger Zone. And honestly, I think this week's Dinger Zone is an important Dinger Zone. On this week on a very special Dinger Zone. We just talk about some things that might make you happy. So
About that time Adam went to the bicycle shop
yeah.
from Different Strokes.
or that one girl kept taking speed.
I am so excited, and we are so excited for the people that support us over at patreon.com/HMP. And if you can't do that, at least jump over to the iTunes or Spotify and give us a 5-star review, a.k.a. Humdinger.
Humdinger.
We really appreciate that. All right, let's get into it. I don't have a trailer per se, but I do want to play the beginning of this here cartoon because it pretty much lays down everything for us. So here is the quote-unquote trailer for Shazam.
This is Billy Batson, star reporter for station WIZZ-TV. He has been picked by the aged wizard Shazam to carry on the wizard's lifelong crusade against crime and the forces of evil. when Billy speaks the wizard's name,
Shazam!
Billy becomes Captain Marvel, mighty champion, combining the wisdom of Solomon, the strength of Hercules, the stamina of Atlas, the power of Zeus, the courage of Achilles, and the speed of Mercury. Billy's twin sister, Mary Batson, has also been granted special powers. When she speaks the name
Shazam!
Mary Batson becomes Mary Marvel, blending the grace of Selena with the best qualities of other goddesses, whose names combined form the word Shazam. The third member of the mighty trio is their friend, lame newsboy Freddie Freeman, when he speaks the name of his idol,
Captain Marvel!
Freddie becomes the powerful Captain Marvel Jr. Together, they are the Mighty Marvel, dedicated to fighting the forces of evil throughout the universe.
Alrighty, that was the trailer.
I just gotta say, before we go in to the next bit, nobody was in a hurry to do anything in 1981.
No, we in the business call this padding. This is a little bit of padding that we do to every show. That is a minute and a half of animation that they had to do, or well, technically once because they animated it, then just edited that bit in there, and then we're putting that chunk in front of every single episode. Therefore, we don't have to create 90 more seconds of material every single week. Funimation doing it in hardcore style. You know what time it is.
It's time for Bruce's Comic Book Connection.
Whoa, what do you got this week?
In 1947, in the pages of Fawcett Comics' Adventures of Captain Marvel, a groundbreaking character arrived on the face of the earth. I'm talking about a world-famous talking tiger, and that is Talkie Tawny. And it's not Talkie with an L, it's Talkie, Tawky. And you got to say it like that, W. Well, anyway, Talkie Tawny was with Fawcett Comics up until 1953, when he left to work for Kellogg's to help launch their new frosted type of flakes. And of course, the eggheads in the C-suite up there in Detroit, well, they think they know more than comic book writers, so they changed his name from Tawny to Tony. But that was only so that he could be replaced by Tony Danza at a later date that may or may not have occurred after the cancellation of Who's the Boss. Now, in the 1970s, Talkie Tawny returned to comics, but this time DC rather than Fawcett, as DC had sued Fawcett into bankruptcy, then bought their IP for pennies on the dollar. But despite all that, Tawny is still a talking tiger. Now, Mr. Tawny made his first appearance in Captain Marvel Adventures number 79 in 1947, published by Fawcett Comics. The story, The Talking Tiger, introduced Mr. Tawny as a humanoid talking Bengal tiger who travels from his native India to the United States in hopes of integrating himself into American society. Although he makes every effort to be sociable, the simple presence of the talking tiger in the city terrorizes the public, leading to Captain Marvel intervening. Then, of course, through the wisdom of Solomon, he learns that Tawny is not a bad guy. So Captain Marvel helps Tawny become a respectable part of society and secures the talking tiger a job as a tour guide at the local museum. And speaking of respectable parts of society, Adam, do you have a list?
Well, if that wasn't enough, let me sell everybody on this 80s animated Shazam, because let me tell you something. This sucker's got everything. We got a snappy intro telling you who all the players are. We got the city zoo where they're expecting a new shipment of animals to come in, just like merchandise at the mall. We got Wiz TV, so you know you're dealing with some mature creators here. Stumbling and bumbling, we got a tiger man in a suit, big boy gorilla complete with lab coat, glowing eyes, good humor zoo worker, hot pants baby mama, crunchy synth music, hot checkers action, green ascots and pink trousers, seals, snakes, and tigers, but not the tiger in the suit. These tigers, we're putting them behind bars, and they're trying to have to make the case to the other tiger. The tiger in a suit. It'll make sense. Don't worry. We got commercial teasers that'll keep you coming back to this program. A cartoon robot machine that only could be conceived in the 80s. Elephant tossing, giant bottle feeding, Captain Marvel bouncing on his butt down the street as a steamroller heads towards him. That actually happens in this show. We got lightning scene transitions. Who's Who at the Zoo, a city park that has never existed, a 385 flavor ice cream man who, shock of all shocks, is a bad guy. We got a worm who talks through an old-timey radio that it wears around its neck. We got a Dum Dum Ray, a candy box boat, an all-worm army, Snagglepuss, Uncle Dudley, fun with dry ice, Sinkhole City, saving a bus full of kids, falling buildings, and Uncle Dudley patented worm finder, call now, a talking worm in a fez being the hype man for Mr. Mind, that radio talking slug that we talked about earlier, complete with gong banging. Get your dry ice dumpsters because we're making it rain and learning hard science here on this kids show. We got an applesauce recipe showdown, and nominations for best lines are, I knew I shouldn't have eaten them pickles. There's nothing worse than an evil-powered, crazed monkey with a green thumb. I smell gorillas. We may have lost our worm, but we still hooked this fish for the authorities. There's also friends, ground worms, and caterpillars. Lend me your antennas. And my favorite is this worse. This is worse than I expected. But what is it worse than what we expected? This show's got everything.
So I had a half memory of, and I had to look into it, is that this show, the Shazam that we watched the first 2 episodes of, was actually split up between an entire hour, because there's another show with there was a cartoon that was 2 shows.
Yes, it was the superhero power hour with Shazam. Power hour.
The kid superpower hour with Shazam.
Yes, and the other show was like Superhero High School or something.
It was called Hero High. And it is exactly what you think it is.
Yeah. And that, for some reason, I didn't have to look that up to know that. And I don't know what that reason might be.
Age.
But come on, I was the prime age for this show in 1981.
I had very vague memories of this show. But I did remember it. And so, it's why they split it up the way they do, Adam, is that so what they would do is they would show you like the first part of Shazam, and then they would go into Hero High, and then they would come back to Shazam and finish Hero High. So you would have a full hour of the show, and kind of like to rope the kids in. Oh, we'll split it into 2 parts so that you have to keep watching our show.
Oh, okay.
But
kind of like how that first season of Seinfeld tried to put 7-8 minutes of stand up in every episode,
right?
Yeah,
because they were trying to split it. Yeah, sort of like that.
But the what they didn't count on was a crafty young sweet Shanzi watching just the Shazam part, because the high school superhero thing was awful.
How did you accomplish that?
By switching the channel.
There were only 2 other ones.
I never
out there.
had confidence. I never had confidence that I would switch back at the right moment.
But for, basically, like, you might lose a minute here and there, but if the commercial comes on for, whatever, Woody Woodpecker or whatever, the commercial was probably coming on for Shazam, so you could flip it back.
I used to sit through 30 minutes of Jim and the Holograms just because it was between Transformers and G.I. Joe, and I was afraid to turn the channel. So I definitely wasn't going to have the courage, because I didn't have buttons. I had a knob, and, that knob's only got so many turns in it. What if I turn away and that's when it breaks and I'm stuck on that other channel forever?
Here's the thing, though.
Those
knobs do break off, though, for real.
I need my Shazam TV. If my TV's stuck on one channel, it damn well better have Shazam on it.
Well, thankfully, you did watch Jim and the Holograms, because those misfits. Mm-hmm.
Oh, you don't get me started, man.
Truly outrageous.
Actually, don't get me started, because they were like 20 and I'm like really old now. So
So I've done a breakdown scene by scene of this show,
and that in this instance is the Lord's honest work, because we kind of have a lot to unpack here.
There's so much that goes on in 22 minutes of each of these episodes that it's like, wow.
It really is.
This is the best idea we've had in a while. Like, and I can say that because it was zero my idea. Like, I had the least part of it of any of us, so I can say that. But this one I never would have in a million years have thought of, and it was just beautiful. It's kind of
So
like beautiful when your uncle has an exotic pet as an animal. Like man, it's beautiful because the stories you're going to tell, but you don't want to be alone in that house.
So right out of the gate, right, with the cold open, what everyone listened to at the top of our podcast, we learn a couple of things about the Marvel family that we didn't know that are slightly different from the movie, right? So like Billy and Mary are twin brother and sister. And Bruce, is that in the comics? I don't know.
In the original comics, it is.
Okay.
In the original comics, they were like orphan twins that were raised by the same wet nurse. Because it was from a time when things like wet nurse were still an acceptable term, I guess.
When we said that in public and we didn't, no problem.
Like there's nothing patently offensive about the term, but I kind of feel like weird. I got to look over my shoulder and whisper it.
Yeah, it's a weird one. You're like,
she's
is that acceptable?
Wet nurse.
Ooh.
And they don't tell you whether or not all of these children are orphans, but you definitely never see the parents.
I'll tell you that I kind of like when they're introducing Freddie Freeman, who, famously Captain Marvel Jr. But they described him as
Tony the Tiger, lame. Freddie Freeman. Those are the two people that everybody knows the most.
They describe him as lame, but it means a totally different thing in 1981 than it does in 2024. Like people don't even know that meaning of lame enough to find it offensive, other than they would say it's offensive to call a guy who's using a crutch not cool. Like they don't even understand just how offensive it is.
How old is this kid supposed to be?
32.
Because that's how old the face looks. The face looks like a 32-year-old man, but the voice is like a 14-year-old.
The first acceptable interpretation of Billy Batson was the recent movie, the Zachary Levi Shazam, because the beauty of this character is I am a child who identifies with this child who becomes a grown man superhero who knows more than the adults do. But they make him too old and you totally lose the magic of it. I mean, don't get me wrong, as an older man, I'd rather see it go in reverse now. Like an old guy says Shazam and he's 20. Like that's what it's getting my money at the movie theater. But anyway, there we have it.
Just CGI into a younger face, Bruce.
So
famously, Freddie.
So let me ask you guys. So with the cold open to the show, that minute and a half long thing that's at the beginning of every episode. Were you guys getting like a real He-Man vibe from that cold open?
Well, of course, man. It's the He-Man people.
Yeah,
right. I know. Yes, I'm aware of that. But what I'm saying is that like you can kind of see like they almost have He-Man here, but not quite yet.
But they've got the same echo on the voice. It is the exact same voice guy because he's one of the Filmation creators.
He is
that kind of thing.
He is.
But yeah, you definitely see that they're doing their blueprint, and we call it the He-Man opening because He-Man is the one that we all saw the most. But I mean, It's a Filmation opening. It's in stuff before and after He-Man too.
But at the same time too, like when you really think about it, like it functions in the same way that a lot of those comic books do, where they have the opening thing of like, here's Peter Parker, Spider-Man, bit by radioactive, boo, 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 boo. Now you're up to speed. Here's what's been going on in the last half an issue.
We even had the villain shaking his fist and saying, "I'll get you next time." I mean, that is straight up Filmation stories. Filmation had 20 plots and they just changed the names of the characters.
What new IP do we have now?
Yeah, basically.
When do we get to this villain, this gorilla guy?
So hold on. So because we're literally going to go scene by scene, I promise you. So the pilot episode of Shazam is called Who's Who at the Zoo. The story is written by Fred Ladd with the teleplay by Dennis O'Flaherty. And Fred Ladd is best known for writing children's shows in the early 70s, like the Pippi Longstocking movies. And Dennis O'Flaherty is best known from writing 8 episodes of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles cartoon. Our opening scene, we start at the zoo. And as Bruce said earlier, same guy who does the narration for He-Man is doing the narration for Shazam. And he starts with, "It's a festive day at the city zoo. A big shipment of animals has just arrived. And Billy Batson, the Wiz TV star reporter, is on the spot with the news that's hot." Which are they trying to be cool? I can't figure out what they're trying to do there with that.
Let's see. It's 1981. Murphy Brown's not around yet.
No, we're still 4 years out from Murphy
It's
Brown.
WKRP in Cincinnati.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
That's the influence here.
Yes. And so Billy's attempting to start his news segment, but immediately Mary is screwing with Billy. She's giving him the raspberries, which is making him laugh. And since he's laughing, his boss is yelling at him. But Billy's taking it in stride. But Billy has every right to be pissed. Let the man work, Mary. And they go live. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Do they have a Donnie and Marie vibe?
Yes, very much.
Oh,
so.
yeah. If they would have started singing in this, I don't think it would have felt out of place at all.
But I
Right.
also mean that Donnie and Marie vibe when your grandpa sits down to watch the Donnie and Marie show, and in the first commercial break, you mention their brother and sister, and he gives you that weird look. He's
Donnie
like,
and
"Are you
Marie."
sure? Because they're acting a lot like maybe they're close friends. It has this that weird, uncomfortable sibling relationship there.
Granddad just turns into Gumby.
So they go from Billy and Mary screwing around to immediately after that they go live with the camera. And you know that because it says on the air. This big flashing light on the camera says on the air and starts flashing. So they go live and Billy starts interviewing one of the directors of the zoo, Mr. Tawny, who happens to be a man in a business suit who also has the head of a tiger. And we learn that the zoo has just captured 3 new gorillas for their new exhibit. And those gorillas' names are Mimi and Alphonse, those are 2 of them. And those two are clearly just, as Adam would say, doing the monkey stuff all the time in their cage. But then we learn that there's a 3rd gorilla that looks less happy called Big Boy. And Mr. Tawny says, there's something about him. He's not like any gorilla I've seen. And we cut to the gorilla and he's got white mutton chops and he starts smiling, letting us know not only is there something fishy about that gorilla, but he's also an evil gorilla. And Billy says, there's something about that gorilla that seems familiar. And then the gorilla starts speaking to himself and says, I must distract him before he remembers where he's seen me before.
I love
How
out
many
loud
gorillas does a
monologuing.
guy see in his life? Like you don't remember where you saw. I would guess first off, let's say maybe a jungle in Africa. Like that's always a good place to start where you may have seen this gorilla.
Where
before.
could I have seen this gorilla before?
Jungle or zoo typically are the only options.
I used to kind of do that at the zoo. I would go to the National Zoo with my kids. We go to the part where the lemurs are.
And you
I
hope that the gorilla mind controlled you?
I would look at the lemurs and I go, Bobby? And I tell my kids, that's Bobby. I knew him back in Madagascar. Oh my God, they took him prisoner.
I'm going to get you out of here, Bobby.
This is my boy.
It just becomes
Bobby.
a prison break.
I loved your mother, I swear.
So the gorilla, this evil gorilla, then mind controls a zookeeper into letting the lions out of their cage.
Like you do.
And Mary, Billy, and Freddie all change into the Marvel family. And I have to give the show this cartoon this. We're not out of the first scene yet. We're not even 5 minutes into the show, and we already see all of them change into superheroes. Bam, just like that. Because if this was a modern show, that probably wouldn't happen until the very end of the first episode.
Oh, yeah.
The lions start going after the other people at the zoo. Like a scantily clad lady holding a baby.
Why? I love this so much.
I don't understand.
She's got like
I
a
do
wild
not
bonnet,
understand.
and hot
she's
pants.
in like those running shorts that people really like to wear in my youth. Like the Farrah Fawcett's. Now, with the talking, mind controlling gorilla, do you think that the person who wrote this episode knew that DC had a talking, mind controlling gorilla?
That is literally one of the questions that I have coming up here.
Okay.
It's literally one of the questions because I can't figure out, did they know? So is the problem that they wrote it thinking they would have Gorilla Grodd, and for some reason DC was like, no, you can't use Gorilla Grodd,
Well,
and so they had to backtrack on it. Or
I can tell you why they couldn't use
hold
it.
on, or
Okay.
is it like the way that you said, where is it something where like they just didn't know that there was a Gorilla Grodd?
Okay, so I've got 2 old man stories to tell in relation to this.
All right.
So the first one, I guess, is that I'll tell why they couldn't use Gorilla Grodd if that's what they wanted. And that's because Hanna-Barbera, a rival animation studio, was making Challenge of the Super Friends, which just had one Gorilla Grodd as a character on it.
Right, in the Legion of Doom.
Now, as far as did they not know they had the character, that would be kind of awesome, because if Fawcett Comics didn't know they had access to the DC character, the reverse thing happened when DC really wanted a character like Plastic Man. They created Elastic Man because the creator didn't know they already owned the IP of Plastic Man. So it'd be awesome if this was another one of those kind of stories.
Totally. Absolutely. So not only does a lion go after a scantily clad lady holding a baby, but then at the last second, Captain Marvel steps in front of her, so the lion can't eat the baby or the lady in the hot shorts. And Mary scoops up that lion, and both lions are put back into their cage. And the Marvels are just standing around wondering how the lions got out. And we cut back to this super intelligent ape that looks, sounds, and talks like Gorilla Grodd. And this ape pulls a lab coat out from behind a bushel of bananas. And he says, "Fools," and he puts on his lab coat. Did they think they could escape the vengeance of Dr. Alarog forever? I'll show them, all of them. And he starts maniacally laughing. and it's one of the things. This is the point where I ask this very same question that you just asked, and we talked about at length. And then we finally, blessedly, cut to scene 2. And we're at a McMansion-sized house where we find Freddie, Mary, and Mr. Tawny, but there's also a fourth person who lives, ? There. Are they all living in that McMansion-sized house? I have no idea. We have no idea, because we also meet Uncle Dudley for the first time, and somewhere Rich Little's ears are bleeding because Uncle Dudley sounds like maybe the worst W.C. Fields impression ever. It's like someone doing an impression of someone doing an impression of someone doing an impression of a bad W.C. Fields. And they're all killing time just waiting to get back from the TV station when Mimi and Alphonse, the two gorillas who do the gorilla stuff, they kidnap both Freddie and Mary. But Tawny knows it was those two banging gorillas because he could smell them.
Did the creators of this show think that, like, if Uncle Dudley H. Dudley sounds like W.C. Fields, all these young kids will embrace him as a familiar voice?
I don't. And I think what happens a lot of the time with voiceover talent stuff is that people use voices because it's just a distinct voice. And just thinking like kids will just like it because it's a distinct voice. They're not going to know where it comes from. For instance, I had no idea that there was a Curly from the Three Stooges, but I definitely knew Jabberjaw when I was a little kid.
Yeah. Oh man, because I think I think I might be different. I feel like I was way more well versed on Peter Lorre at age 8 because of Looney Tunes than my third or second grade classmates were.
I know a little bit of history, thank you. But it only extends to Warner Brothers properties. If you got any MGM stuff, I'm lost.
I even know the racist stuff, kids, because it's 1982.
Racism is still allowed, don't worry.
Some would say it was encouraged in certain circumstances. Not that I'm endorsing that, but it was a rough time.
The 80s were
so
weird.
Both Tawny and Uncle Dudley start arguing about what they should do. And Uncle Dudley says something that baffled me. And Bruce, maybe you can tell me what's going on here. But Uncle Dudley says, "No need to worry about trouble when Uncle Marvel is around." So Bruce, is Uncle Dudley canon?
I'm so glad you asked this, because Dudley H. Dudley is his God-given name given to him by Otto Binder and C.C. Beck.
Uh-huh.
And he is the foster parent sort of for this Marvel family. And he has this shtick, like his running gimmick, his thing that makes Dudley H. Dudley who he is the Marvel family all says at once, "Shazam!" And they all transform, and he goes, "Well, rats, it didn't work this time." But every time it doesn't work, and he says it didn't work this time. But he will actually just manually, physically change clothes while they're fighting the bad guys. And then he's all in his costume to pose for pictures by the time the newspaper gets there and the bad guys defeated.
I see. So Uncle Marvel is canon within the original Shazam books.
As a W.C. Fields knockoff, too.
Wow, really? So
Yeah, because we're
it's
talking
all the same.
1947,
Sure.
I think. So
Sure.
it's a little more recent then.
Mhm.
We do it all for the kiddies.
So then we go to scene 3. We're back at the zoo at night, and we know the zoo at night is spooky because we see a spookily lit owl. And Tawny tells Uncle Dudley to stay back. He'll see what's going on. And as Uncle Dudley is waiting, a fox bites off one of Uncle Dudley's fingers.
Well, not for nothing. He was taunting that fox.
He was, and he deserved it. And then after
Did you see
stumbled,
the baby fox too?
I thought that was his lady, the fox's lady, because she was
sorry.
like, they were like clearly like post-coital, because she's like
Ooh.
laying on him, like, yeah.
I took it as like Mama Fox and Cub, but I like your version a lot better.
Foxy fox sex.
Foxy
They
foxes.
put all 3 X's in the word Foxy, which I assume is spelled with 3 X's.
So then Uncle Dudley like is falling backwards, like starts walking backwards, and a seal kicks him into a hot dog cart.
If I had $1 for every time.
One of my
and
favorites.
and then a snake crushes Uncle Dudley's rib cage. And finally, Uncle Dudley is kidnapped by not Gorilla Grodd. And so Tawny can't figure out what's going on. So he asks a couple of caged tigers what's been going on at the zoo. And they actually don't say to Tawny, hey, you are also a tiger.
Why
Let us
do
out
you
of
get
this cage.
Why do you get a suit and everything, and we're here to suffer?
Instead,
Have you not read Animal Farm? 4 legs good, 2 legs better.
Instead, they tell him that definitely not Gorilla Grodd's plan for the Marvel family, and tell him everything that's going on while he's at the zoo. And while they're spilling his entire plan, we're absolutely serious. This is not Gorilla Grodd. Sees Tawny, and he tells him, get out of that suit, which Tawny does immediately, jumps out of his suit.
Like he gives in a little too easily because, I mean, he's a gorilla, but you are a man-sized tiger. You got to say that the Vegas line is going to be a push. Like nobody's a clear favorite in this fight.
And we learned that not only is Tawny not a guy with a tiger's head in a suit, but that Tawny is just a tiger who can speak English and sometimes wears a suit.
But he's got really
Apparently
big
he's
pectoral
been
muscles.
neutered.
It makes no sense to me at all. No sense to me at all, that character. Like I find it fascinating that they decided to put this all into this cartoon, because this really does feel like a comic book that was made for small children in the 40s. It really does feel that way with the talking tiger. And to have the talking tiger 40 years later in the 80s in this cartoon, it just feels like such a weird holdover. But I like how weird the show is, because it's very, very strange.
And they don't address it. It's just like,
There
it's
were-
just a thing.
There were 2 TV shows based on Fawcett Comics around this time. Of course, the other one, The Adventures of Plastic Man,
Yeah.
which I remember super fondly. I remember this one very fondly. So I got to say, Fawcett Comics did well for themselves, even though they didn't stand the test of time. You know, they couldn't make it through that post-war kind of death of comic books. But
Well, they also got
They had legacy.
sued. Didn't they also get sued by DC?
yeah, they got sued into oblivion.
Yeah. So we go to scene 4, and Tawny sneaks into the Wiz TV building, and he goes by a lazy security guard who sees Tawny and says to the camera, I knew I shouldn't have eaten those pickles. But if you look close, you can see that the security guard has a giant jar of pickles half empty on his desk. And when I say giant, I mean like Costco cheese balls sized jar of
cheesy
pickles.
poofs.
AKA
Yeah.
the
Yes.
only way you should be buying pickles in a big giant
So,
5-gallon jar.
I don't think you should. I don't think you should have access to that many pickles if you genuinely want access to that many pickles.
I agree. There's something strange about you if you're like, I am just going to sit here and eat this entire giant jar of pickles.
Listen, this was years ago, but I will say that I did buy one of the, like, it maybe not 5 gallons that was a joke, but one of the bigger ones that you could get, and like, It's like it lasted about a month. That whole pick. I mean, but it's
Well,
pickles, you
okay,
know?
that's different than gigantic jar of pickles in one sitting. Half
Oh,
gone.
heavens, no, no. You got to
Yeah,
call into work if you're eating that many pickles.
I will say the best pickles I ever had were at this place in Nashville, and since I moved away from there, I haven't eaten a pickle since. So I'm
So
down to
Tawny
less than one
runs
pickle per year.
to the elevator, and when the elevator operator sees this steroided out, naked, walking on its hind legs tiger, and it's running towards him, the elevator operator jumps into the elevator, and it does one of these things that's hard to describe in an audio format. But when he takes the elevator, the entire elevator goes down, like the door and everything goes under the floor. Like the elevator operator so scared he even took the elevator away, like the doors. It's hard to describe when you're in an audio format. I guarantee you, it's weird.
If it's on this show,
Okay.
it's pretty weird. Yeah.
I think that the connection went out for a minute. You guys couldn't hear me, but I was still talking about some pickles here.
So scene 5, we then cut to Not Gorilla Grodd's secret laboratory, which comes complete with a Rube Goldberg machine that turns plant seeds into giant killer plants that can sink battleships.
But this machine like has a boot and a socker and like a mitt or something that the shoe is kicking.
Yes, there is a
weird that the villain's plan from when I was a young child is the hero's plan for like my grandchildren. Like the guy who wants to free the animals and plant seeds is going to be the hero for them. For us, we got to kill that SOB quick. Somebody might get fresh air and then they'll be hooked on that stuff.
And we learned that Not Gorilla Grodd's plan is to turn the entire world into a jungle that, and I'm quoting here, so the entire human race will become my slaves.
He doesn't mince words at all.
But would it really be that much worse than your life already is?
Well, I like his rationale is that like if the entire world is all jungly and everything, then we have the advantage.
Have you guys
what?
ever spent much
Do
time
you know
in
we
the
have
jungle?
guns?
Have you guys ever spent much time in the jungle?
Not a ton, but I have spent some.
I've
he's
been
right.
to the
The
jungle.
animals-
We have fun in games.
The animals do have the advantage, man. I'm just telling you. They got home field for sure there. The referees are on their side and everything.
So we cut back to the Wiz TV building where finally Tawny has cut up with Billy Batson, and he learns that Not Gorilla Grodd has taken Freddie and Mary and Uncle Dudley hostage, and they look across the street where the city park is turned into a jungle. So Billy turns into Captain Marvel, and he says he needs to beat Cheeks to the zoo. And then we cut to commercial. And when we return, Captain Marvel is flying over the city. And this is actually fairly impressive. And it made me wonder if it's something like they did with He-Man where, there would be like the same shots that they would have in every single episode of He-Man.
Like He-Man running in a very, how
Right.
did I say this? A very, who's the guy that did Sweat into the Oldies?
Richard Simmons?
A very Richard Simmons style of running on He-Man.
But it was that same shot, and so
Yes.
it makes me wonder with the flying sequence here with Captain Marvel. I didn't notice it in the second episode, but there is a lot of flying that he's doing here, and it's kind of impressive animation for something as cheesy as Filmation. Like Filmation is not known for its high quality animation.
I strongly suspect that episode 1 and 2 were produced almost simultaneously.
Mhm.
So that might be why it wasn't repurposed between 1 and 2, but it was a good shot. It has to have been repurposed by episode 4.
Yeah, and they go through an entire season. So.
And when we get to the end, I'll explain why I think they were producing episode 1 and 2 at the same time.
Okay. So when Captain Marvel is flying over the city, he sees that the town has been completely taken over by killer plants. But before he can do anything about it, he sees that the animals have all escaped from the zoo. And he throws a charging elephant into a baby carriage, who is then given a giant bottle by a mother.
Because that's what you do.
Yeah.
Beautiful, man. I couldn't have done it better myself.
Not only am I able to grab this this elephant that's gone through, I happen to have a bottle that does carry,
An
78
elephant-sized
gallons.
bottle.
What's more impressive is it probably actually has elephant milk in it.
That is impressive. And like, can you imagine how that lady was like, I knew it.
Like, you go to a store and ask for an elephant-sized baby bottle, they'll laugh at you, but you go and ask for a jug of elephant milk and they're calling somebody. Like, you're not leaving that store
It's true.
unescorted.
That is true. And so Captain Marvel ends up caging the rest of the animals, puts them back into the zoo. And by the way, in this world, I've noticed something about all of the animals. When the second that any animal escapes from the zoo, it immediately turns into a bloodthirsty man killer, no matter what type of animal it is.
Yeah, I would imagine like probably the good majority of zoo animals have kind of had it, the wild kind of beaten out of them, so to speak. Hopefully not actually beaten, but you know what I mean? Like you're domesticated after a while.
When life's easy, you're into easy living.
Exactly.
That's just
It's
basically
true.
it. Like, why would I go kill that guy over there that looks like a smoker and probably tastes kind of funny anyway when they just throw me steak every day when I don't have to do nothing?
Exactly.
Did we learn nothing from the zebra in Madagascar? So now that he's at the zoo, Captain Marvel decides to save his friends, but before he can, Not Gorilla Grodd hits him with a ray gun that makes Captain Marvel too powerful, and he falls through the floor. Captain Marvel tries to compensate by flying up, but he flies into space instead, destroying one of maybe 3 satellites in orbit at the time. I mean, how many satellites were in space in 1981?
Not a lot.
But it gets him back to Earth, and Captain Marvel says, This is not Gorilla Grodd's most cunning plot yet," and immediately after figures that if he changes back to Billy Batson, he'll still be incredibly strong, but he'll be able to manage how strong he is.
I thought this was kind of a really fun idea.
It was
like,
neat.
I've got this now. This guy's overpowered. If I change back to my regular self is going to have superpowers. Not quite as much as Shazam himself proper and everything, but I thought that was really cool.
But did you kind of feel sorry for the snake he tied into a ball?
Well, we're getting there.
Now, he looked okay.
We're getting there.
And if cartoons had told me anything.
So Billy Batson goes back to Not Gorilla Grodd's secret base in the zoo, where a snake tries to kill him, but Billy kills the snake instead by turning it into a ball and throws the snake ball at Not Gorilla Grodd, which brings the snake back to life and wraps itself around the bad guy.
What a
stopping him
coincidence.
completely.
What a coincidence that
I
this
know.
thing that you just knotted up and everything is going to not only just go flailing out, but specifically wrap around this guy and look at it. But he looks at him as if he's confused as what's to happen as well. The snake looks like, I don't know how I got here, but I guess I'm holding you hostage now.
I just want to go on the record as saying I'm pro snake. I don't like what they did to the poor guy.
Yeah, he didn't have that. He didn't have that coming. Not really.
So then Freddie and Mary turn into Captain Marvel Jr. and Mary Marvel.
This is where we have to talk about Freddie and his safe word and how bizarre of a master and servant relationship does he have to have with Billy.
It is really crazy because they're friends, but his friend is his idol.
It's like Eastbound and Down. Did you guys ever watch that show?
Oh yeah.
Sure.
And Kenny Powers, his best friend, was the only guy who would hang out with him because Kenny Powers was his idol.
He's Stevie. Oh my God. He's Stevie. That's how you've just described this kid. He's Stevie, just going around, just going like, I'm just happy to be here.
Yeah. And, he lets the narrator call him lame.
Outside of him looking 35 years old and sounding like he's 14, I thought it was just, it's fun. It's fun, this character. And like, I'm happy then to for next week to compare this to the Shazam movie and everything, and how they I'm sure they're going to be one to
Yeah,
one.
I'm sure it's close.
Pretty
I'm
one to
sure
one.
it's really close.
If that talking tiger comes in there, I'm gonna have a heart attack.
I think this is the era when I started to prefer Shazam, Captain Marvel to Superman, because I had a nice little run of me being more into Captain Marvel than Superman. Probably started around this time.
So Captain Marvel Jr. destroys the ray gun, turning Captain Marvel back to regular strength. and he asks Gorilla Grodd, "Why do you do this?" To which not Gorilla Grodd says, "I wanted to be the first gorilla in Who's Who," which I think might have been a magazine. Bruce, do you know what this is?
It's a book. Yes, it's a big hardcover book that would publish all the people that matter.
Mhm.
So it started off with just Who's Who. And then there was like Who's Who in America. Then Who's Who among American businessmen. Who's Who among college students. Who's Who among American physicians. And it really just turned into a thing where it's like, you've been nominated for Who's Who. If you want to accept the nomination, send $40 our way. Your name just might show up in this book saying you're important.
Also,
And
Oh, so it's just a scam.
Yeah, it started off, I think, legit, but it really did turn into a scam.
also referenced in a Monkeys song, "Stepping Stone."
Wow, now that's when your cartoon has range.
So Captain Marvel gives us the titular line of the episode, and he says, "We'll make a special edition for you called Who's Who with the Zoo," which pisses off not Gorilla Grodd, and he says, "I'll get you for this, you big red cheese." And everyone starts laughing like it's a TV show from the 80s because it is.
Freeze frame.
And you think we're at the end of the episode because it is. You're right. It's the end of the episode.
And I got to say, the greatest nickname in all of comics is the Big Red Cheese.
And here's the thing, they do it in the episode too, so this is a recurring theme with them on this Big Red Cheese nonsense.
Well, that's the whole thing.
It was in the comics in the 40s.
Oh, my word.
Yeah.
So that's the whole thing. I didn't, I never really read Shazam because by the time I got into comics, I was in like junior high and high school. And so that stuff was not cool. And I like dark stuff and everybody's wearing a bandana and they have belts everywhere and it's cool. So I didn't know this, but is the Big Red Cheese, is that used as a pejorative in the comics?
I don't really, I think it's used pretty neutrally.
I see.
But it's one of those where it just depends on, two people can call you the same thing, and one of them, it sounds like they're saying it with disdain, and the other one, it's like,
why'd you
it's
put
how
some
friends
sass
talk to
on
each
it?
other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I don't know. I never took it as a pejorative, but maybe that's how it started, and he owned
It just,
that.
right,
Kinda like
he owned
Yankee
it.
Doodle. Yeah.
He's taking it back.
That's my word.
Because
So-
the song Yankee Doodle was made to ridicule Americans, and we took it back and we said, no, we're going to embrace it.
Yeah. Take it back.
So do you guys have any other thoughts on episode 1?
It's a lot of stupid fun, but it sets you up for exactly what this program is.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
yeah.
I got so much to say about the first title card I saw in episode 2, so I can't wait.
Well, that's where we're going. So episode 2, The Incredible Sinking City, written by Paul Dini, who of course is best known for his work as a writer on the Saturday morning cartoon Gilligan's Planet.
And he was the best darn writer on Gilligan's Planet.
Mm-hmm. Also, one of the creators of Batman the Animated Series,
that
but
little thing.
mostly Gilligan's Planet he's known for.
Do you remember that episode of Gilligan's Planet where they had the talking gorilla scientist that wanted to take over the planet?
That's the only one I've seen. So we go to scene 1. We get the same cold open, that same minute and a half. Thanks, Filmation. That minute and a half long thing that you listened to at the top of our episode. Scene 1, we open into City Park, and Billy and Mary Batson are playing frisbee, wearing the exact same clothes we saw them wearing in the last episode. When Billy says, "Hey sis, nice throw for a girl."
Boom.
And, because both Billy and Mary are so kind, they have decided to involve their cripple friend Freddie, and he catches it, thankfully. So no one says, "Nice catch, Freddie," they thankfully just let sleeping dogs lie. And when Mary throws the frisbee back to Billy, he doesn't catch it, giving Mary some sweet, sweet vengeance. We then see a guy who looks very much like a child molester riding one of those ice cream vendor bikes.
Yeah.
And in the creepiest voice you could possibly imagine, starts asking, "Who wants ice cream?"
Can I go ahead and just say something in my defense, anticipating what's coming?
Mm-hmm.
When this guy revealed his true identity, I was totally shocked. shocked. I'm not going to lie. I was totally shocked when the mustache came off. But pray continue. I never would have dreamed that this person would lower himself to selling ice cream.
You mean
out of a bike. Out of a bike.
I mean, if you got to sell ice cream, might as well work your quads while you're doing
True.
it. I mean, the glutes get a little bit of that too. And you know, the ladies love a bald man with glutes.
And this creeper says he has 385 yummy flavors, but there is no way he's getting that many flavors into that little cooler on that bike.
I think he did the thing where there's like 8 different flavors, but then you do the math like that's 8. Then you mix number 1 and number 2. Then you mix number 1 and number 2 and number 3. Then you mix number 1 and number 2, number 3. You know, follow it all the way out.
Sure.
And you come up with 385.
Sure. Okay. We'll give him that then. We'll give that creepy child molester.
Or if it's
due.
like Dippin' Dots and they're all like tiny little balls of different flavors.
The only thing that says child molester more than selling ice cream with a mustache is selling ice cream with a fake mustache. So pray continue.
The frisbee hits this child molester on the ice cream bike in the face, which makes him smash into a tree, ruining his ice cream bike and any chances he might have of molesting children. And the Marvel family comes over and they say they'll help him, but he doesn't want any help, and they walk away from the crash. But the second they do, a caterpillar wearing glasses pops out of the ice cream cooler, and it starts yelling at the guy riding the bike. And it turns out he's not a child molester at all. He's actually Dr. Savannah in disguise. And the talking caterpillar, his name is Mr. Mind. And they actually happen to be partners in crime, which is way less creepy than I thought this episode was going.
I really wish I'd asked to keep my ex-wife's pearls in the divorce, because I needed something to clutch when they revealed that was Savannah, because that did catch me off guard. I knew that Mr. Mind was going to be the villain in this one, but I did not see him working with Savannah so early on in the franchise.
That's the thing about this show, man. It gets to the meat.
But that's also an episode written by Paul Dini, who there's no way in heck Paul Dini would have written a character named Dr. Alarog.
That's true. That's true. He would just have a worm army.
The gorilla would have a little worm hidden in its leash. Yes.
So
Paul Dini writes gorillas with leashes, by the way.
So for some reason that we don't know yet, these two, this caterpillar, this talking caterpillar, and this guy who is not a child molester, they both for some reason hate the Marvel family. No, and also I have a question, because it seems like sometimes everybody in the world knows that Billy and Mary are also Captain Marvel and Mary Marvel. Is that it? But sometimes they don't.
See, that's something that puzzles me, going all the way back to the earlier comics that I read. Obviously, I wasn't around for the old comics. But Mary Marvel even kind of looks the same. Yeah. She doesn't even change all that much. So I don't quite know. But if the public did know about it, I mean, it wouldn't be that big a deal. It's still, they have a great explanation for a double identity just by the very nature of his power. So I think that was some of the brilliance that makes his character age better than some others.
And just when you think the scene is over, you're certain the scene is over, Dr. Savannah presses a button on the ice cream bike, and a ray gun comes out, which he shoots at the entire Marvel family, making them forget that they need to say the word Shazam to give them their powers, except Freddy, who still has superpowers because he doesn't say Shazam. He says Captain Marvel to gain his superpowers.
So leave it up to Paul Dini to take the creepy thing and at least make it pay off.
Mm-hmm. And he destroys the ray gun, which now means that Billy and Mary can now say Shazam, and they do. And they go after Mr. Mind and Dr. Savannah, but Mr. Mind escapes by going down the sewer drain. And for some reason, everyone keeps calling Mr. Mind a worm. Even Mr. Mind himself calls himself a worm.
But he's clearly a caterpillar.
He looks way more like a caterpillar, because a worm would be way grosser. There's something very cute about Mr. Mind. And we do see later, oh, that's actually kind of gross.
Because he's got little glasses.
I mean, let's just be real. Could a worm wear glasses and talk through a radio? No, it's got to be a caterpillar.
You are being real. You're being too real. And
Sorry if I
also,
offend you, America, but that's not a worm. I don't care what you call it.
also, I guess I didn't know that everyone in this world uses the nickname the Big Red Cheese, because Dr. Savannah calls him that as well when he gets caught, and he also uses it as a pejorative.
Somebody totally had a bunch of big red cheese lunchboxes they were planning on selling when this show hit.
I think you are right. And then we finally get to scene 2. All of what we just said was in the first scene of the episode. We cut to the sewer where Mr. Mind is floating on a box of candy, which we know is a box of candy because it says candy on the side of the box.
As you know, we all go to the store and simply buy things labeled as candy with no follow-up questions.
And he's feeling sorry for himself. He says how he tried to tell Dr. Savannah that the ray wouldn't work on Captain Marvel Jr., but he didn't listen because he's just a little guy. And that's when he hatches his scheme. He's going to create an all-worm army, and he starts laughing maniacally. Scene 3, we cut back to the Wiz TV building, where instead of working on his nightly news show, he has a nightly news show, that idiot. He's talking with Mary and Freddie in his office about Mr. Mind, wasting the day away when he should be working on his nightly news show.
I love it. Not only will you hire a kid, but you don't keep him to task. You know why the station is called WHIZ?
Because, well, it's WIZZ in the cartoon, but I know it's because it's the name of the comic book.
Yeah, like originally it was Wiz Comics before it became Captain Marvel Adventures.
So now that stupid Tawny Tiger and Uncle Dudley show up, ruining everything, when Dudley is trying to weasel his way onto the air to sell his stupid dry ice machine, that the second you put a dry ice cube in a cup of water turns the entire room into a smoky-filled death trap, loading up Chekhov's gun for later.
Yep.
And Uncle Dudley looks out the window, and the entire Marvel family realize that a huge sinkhole is enveloping the city. A school bus is teetering on the edge of it, and some bald, weak-willed loser drives his car to the side of the bus, and he just runs away from the scene of the crime.
Oh, man, the 80s were like Mad Max time. How did we survive?
Billy sees what's happening and turns into Captain Marvel, saving all the white children inside at the very last minute. But just when you thought the trouble was over, a skyscraper is about to fall over, and it takes the combined strength of Captain Marvel Jr., and Mary Marvel to move the skyscraper back into place. We then go to the next scene back at the Wiz TV building. There's a lot of backslapping and that was a great job and attaboys, and they're second guessing about what was happening, and all of the entire Marvel family is there when Mr. Mind shows up on screen and admits that he was the one that caused billions of dollars of damage and millions of lives lost. And he gloats about his brilliance and how his all-worm army is undefeatable, and he pronounces himself the king of the world. And before we cut to commercial break, the narrator, who we stated earlier is the same guy who narrated He-Man, says, "Holy moly, how the worm has turned." We cut
Is that even a saying?
How the worm has turned?
Yeah, I don't think that's a saying, but he
no,
says
the worm
like
has turned is definitely a saying. Yes.
I thought it was the world has turned or something.
No, it's the worm has turned. Yeah.
What the heck does that mean? How do you even know if a worm has turned or not?
Well, it's in reference to that everything is different now that the worm is moving this way.
Can you believe this is the bridge too far for me?
I'll believe a talking gorilla, but
the worm has turned. I cannot get in on this one.
I ain't abiding by that.
So when we get back from the commercial break, we're still at the Wiz TV building, and as the Marvels talk about their next move, they ask what Uncle Dudley thinks, but why?
Yeah.
Why are they asking Uncle Dudley anything? Who cares what Uncle Dudley is thinking?
That's the whole point of that character. You get it, Sean. And like they know that is the point of that character in the comics. I don't think the cartoon quite understood, but they still executed just the same.
and they find that both Uncle Dudley and Tawny Tiger have left, to their surprise. We then go to scene 5 and we cut to an open field somewhere where Uncle Dudley and Tawny Tiger are walking around with an invention that Uncle Dudley made several years ago, he claims, called the Worm Finder,
Like you do.
For fishing trips.
which leads them to a cave, and Uncle Dudley finds both Mr. Mind and the Worm Army, who are holding a meeting where one of the worms are speaking that isn't Mr. Mind. Can all worms speak English in this universe? And he doesn't even have a little stereo. He's just talking.
That's right.
You need the stereo at the very least.
Anyway, the worm that is talking is wearing a fez.
It's so good. I don't know why.
It's awesome, though. I mean, it's the best headwear ever
He's
invented.
at a lectern and he's just hyping him up. It's so good.
And he's speaking and he says, "This guest is a worm amongst worms, a worm who knows the definition of the word slimy."
And at this point, I just want to go on the record, all in, 100%. I totally support taking this script, getting Paul Dini and James Gunn to work together to make this the plot of Shazam 3. Go ahead.
Hey.
I mean,
So
they don't
then-
really have to change it much. They just got to make it last a little bit longer. The script's already flawless.
So after the worm and the fez is speaking, the camera pans over to a worm who hits a gong, but the gong is actually a soup can lid, and he's hitting the gong with a matchstick. And he gives a rousing speech. Mr. Mike gives a rousing speech about how many worms have been taken on fishing trips, a one-way fishing trip.
Yes, that's
And
the best
everybody
line of the
goes
episode.
crazy, and we must take the surface world for ourselves. But unfortunately, I'm sorry to report that both Uncle Dudley and Tawny Tiger do escape with their lives. And we go to scene 6. We're back at the Wiz TV building. Uncle Dudley and Tawny Tiger tell the Marvel family what the worms' plans are, and they come up with a plan on how to stop the worms. They'll make it rain, forcing the worms out. But how? It hasn't rained in months. When all of a sudden, Uncle Dudley wheels out Chekhov's dry ice machine, and a plan is hatched.
Now,
Only-
man, call me naive, but I just wanted that ice machine to go away. I did not expect it to be a Chekhov's ice machine. I can't say that I was happy when it happened. I was genuinely caught. I was genuinely caught as off guard as I likely was at 7 years of age when I first saw it.
I'm flabbergasted.
So when Uncle Dudley turns on Chekhov's ice machine, it doesn't work right away. And not only does it not work, it starts sweating, and a big tongue comes out. Human tongue comes out.
That's just how they did it.
Everything
was a
that's
little
beautiful about
creepy.
life, man.
It was a little creepy. So because it's not working, Uncle Dudley says that he's got to tinker with the machine a bit. And by tinker with the machine a bit, he means kick it in its nuts. And he does. And the machine starts working immediately. We then cut to farmland somewhere where Mary Marvel, Captain Marvel, and Captain Marvel Jr. have put all the dry ice in trash dumpsters. And their plan is to drop the dry ice into clouds, which will make it rain, washing out the worm army. And just in time, too, because the worm army is trying to destroy the farmer's market. Can you believe it? The farmer's market.
I like
the
how that's
dry-
the first step on their thing, because he even mentions it. He's just like, listen, today we're doing the farmer's market. Tomorrow, the world.
There has been a few times where I wanted to destroy the farmer's market. But the dry ice, they make they dump the dry ice and they make it rain, washing out all the worms, murdering them all. But Mr. Mine has hidden in an apple at the farmer's market, escaping the Marvels again, and the episode ends.
Oh, it's just
And
it's a glorious time.
This second episode. Now, the first episode is, forgettable. But man, this second episode, the beauty of the second episode, like I said, I'm not joking. that I would love to see this like turned into the story for Shazam 3 and just lean into the humor, because you can have a lot of fun with this. And this is what is good about life, man, is stuff like this. Like this is what is good about what we do, and the occasional gold nugget that's out there inside of the oysters or whatever. This is one of the shiny.
Yeah,
ones.
I
love
was
the second
truly
episode.
afraid that this was going to be astonishingly awful, but it is, but in the way that you want it to be.
This is the good kind of bad. Like
Yeah.
I enjoyed these 2 episodes, and if I hadn't had to have done the blow by blow, scene by scene, it would have flown by. I mean, unfortunately, I wanted to do this because I got us into this situation, and I was like, well, I'm the one who got us here. I'll get us out.
I gotta
No, you
figure
did
it
a
out
great
somehow.
job, Sean. Great job all the way around.
Oh, thank you.
Well, and it's-
so,
I will say, man, to my surprise, my wife actually watched this with me.
wow, really?
Yeah, she didn't like it at all,
What?
Well, no,
but she watched it. So,
that's
I
on
guess she's
you.
always got that to hold over me if we go to court.
Yeah,
That's on you, lady.
Oh man, I hate to get too far off track because we pretend to stay laser focused around here.
Uh-huh.
But I haven't been able to pick a movie on movie night since 2004 when I picked Eraserhead.
Well, that'll do it.
And have never since then been allowed to pick. But come on, there's got to be a statute of limitations.
Well,
on
you're
that.
like, well, Meemaw's in town. Time to bust out a racer
So
head
she's
for
like,
family movie night.
finally, I'm going to let you pick what we watch again. I'll pop this on 2 episodes.
Could have been worse. Well, before we get to our final review, we have to ask ourselves one very important question: is how in the world does this 1980s Filmation animated adventure relate back 1-to-1 with Sylvester Stallone?
I have no idea, because I wrote 6 pages getting this episode done, and I ran out of time. So I have no idea.
If you would like a great no prize, figure out how this relates back 1-to-1 with Sylvester Stallone. Email us at heromoviepodcast@gmail.com, and maybe we'll do a beyond no prize. Maybe we'll get you a little something else, depending on how well you've written that out. So
I will give you my watch along commentary on Eraserhead if you want it.
we'll put you in the pantheon.
That baby
of
looks
HMV.
weird.
My dad was having some relationship problems. I said, "Would you come over and watch a movie with Karen?" He was there that night, and he's on her side.
Oh, that's
He
so
won't even
good.
take his own son's side in this argument.
That's so good.
And for good reason.
You depressed, Dad? Come over and watch Eraserhead.
Yeah, jeez, man, that's on you, Bruce.
And at the same
It
time,
really
too, it's
is.
just
You
like,
know what? It is. I've. You guys may not know this, but I can misjudge a situation.
and as his progeny, too. That's even, it's like it puts another weird layer into it. I don't know. It's real weird. Real weird.
After the movie was over, were you like, "You're welcome"?
Ta-da!
I was like, where you guys going? Don't you want to see how it ends?
See,
There was a
things
whole
aren't
lot of
so
that.
bad. We could still be watching that movie.
Now we're going to go through the rest of Mr. Lynch's filmography, and you're going to love it.
Oy vey. I like Eraserhead just fine because it feels like a student film, but there are many, many movies of his where I'm just like, nope, not for me.
I'm of the same feeling there.
Really peaked with Dune.
Well, that will do it for this episode of Hero Movie Podcast. We'll talk about what we're doing next week in just a moment. In the meantime, Bruce, where can we find more of your work on the internet?
You can check out the YouTube channel. Not as much going up there. Been kind of busy outside of the creator space, but there's still good stuff there. Hopefully I have a video popping up soon going over the Crunchyroll Anime Awards with a friend of the show here, Matthew Vandiver.
Oh, nice.
You know, the Oscars and the Crunchyroll Anime, or they always happen on the same weekend. I don't know why.
And the Fangoria Awards, it's all a mess.
It's a nut job show. Sean, what else?
We have another podcast that we're doing next called Mandalorian 30 Questions, where each week we ask 30 questions about the latest episode of season 3 of The Mandalorian. And boy, this week was a real banger of an episode. So we've got a lot of questions.
It's a wee bit of a corker, so check it on out.
It's a real corker.
Check it out wherever you find finer podcasts. That will do it, everybody. We did the animated Shazam this week, but you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna do the full live action Shazam next week when we're talking Shazam, A Fury of the Gods. what will happen to Shazam in the new James Gunn universe? According to the director, it all kind of depends on how successful this movie is. So will it be successful? Will we love it? Join us next week when we find out. For Sweet Sean's and Kovacs from the internet, Bruce Leslie, I'm Matt Porters. Stay super, everybody.
Bye, Marty and Evie.